Guys, we're back in Rhode Island today for another episode of Site Visit. I want to talk a little bit about the interior framing. I've talked about it on almost every episode. You can start to really see this skylight detail come to life. So above here, we have two Velux skylights on the roof. They're not cut in yet. We can kind of see where the 2x framing is holding up that Advantech on the roof. And then you have these 2x's coming down on an angle. You can see that these die right into what will be the future glass for these skylights. And if you notice right here, right above me here is our ceiling joist for our front section of the home. And those are going to be clipped off to allow our gyp to run all the way up to our skylight. So here in New England, we are plastering and blueboarding, or blueboarding and plastering. So this will all be a plaster area. Being that this is going to be pouring in a ton of natural light, we'll likely two-coat this, meaning that we'll do a scratch coat on the plaster, and then we'll do a veneer coat on top of that to make sure it's ultra flat. So when light is pouring into this space, we're not seeing any of the imperfections that might be in the board or the plaster itself. Now, I really want to call attention to not only this, but how it comes together over here. So this is actually a critical point. You can see how all three of those planes come together and hit that one spot. It's really, really critical, something easily that can easily be overlooked. So it's really critical that we get a mock-up with our blue board, our half-inch blue board, as well as a veneer coat plaster, and figure out that outside, or those two inside corners, and then make sure that we're matching that corner bead that's going to run along this top of wall into the lower section of the skylight, and have that corner bead come over and die into that. That's going to be a critical element, and it's really those details that help everything come together really nice and make it feel as though it's thoughtfully done. Now behind, this is the kitchen area. While I get these renderings up, I might as well show you what the kitchen's going to look like. Very similar to this, but you can start to see how this section here is all lower. We have all pretty much dead space up there, which will be used for mechanical, but we have essentially a floor-to-ceiling cabinetry here, and we're going to be working with material millwork on this kitchen, of course. Floor-to-ceiling cabinetry, and then we have countertop cabinetry here, and that countertop is going to run all the way over and then die into our window. So our countertop material will run into the window, which would be really nice. We have this awesome corner unit from Schoen. You get the view of the shipyard and the windmills, which is really cool, kind of juxtaposed to all the residential on that side. And then we'll have a center hood here, which will be vented out, and then a really, really cool island. So Ken over at Material Millwork, as well as Julia, the homeowner architect, they're going to end up heading over to Berkshire Wood Products. So apparently there's a helicopter. We're good. So Julia and Ken are going to run to, or going to visit Berkshire Wood Products, and they're going to pick out a natural slab that we're going to fabricate in the shop, and it's going to be completely waterfalled up, across, back down, and then we're going to have this cabinetry that, rather than going from underneath the counter all the way to the floor, it's going to be suspended. So Ken and I were actually talking about the details of this and how we're going to have a steel substructure inside supporting that live edge slab, and the cabinetry that will appear as though they're just floating on top there. In the front section of this house, we have our primary closet. It's also set up for a washer dryer, as well as I'm actually backwards here. We have our primary bathroom, and then as well as our primary closet, and then down into our primary bedroom, which has another one of those corner units from Schoen. We have our inboard steel, which will be behind the window section. That will actually get sanded and oiled to have a natural finish on it. But again, this is where you have the complete residential view of the Providence River. You can notice that these ceilings in here are flat, very intentional. We want the spaces, the living spaces to be more grand, but one thing we skipped over is here in the hallway, we have a third skylight. So you get this awesome angled ceiling that dives up and then dives right into our skylight above there. So as the sun casts over the house, sunlight will pour down into this hallway, which otherwise is pretty narrow and pretty typical, but with that natural light, and then as you walk down towards the bedroom, it becomes more grand. It really does add that really cool detail. Downstairs has been framed. Downstairs will eventually be 2 bedrooms, as well as another bathroom, and of course all of the mechanical space. One thing that came up when we had applied for our building permit is they wanted to see a vapor retarder on the inside of our foundation wall. We do have that Tremco product as well as the exterior insulation, but they wanted to see that, so we decided to use the Siga MyVest. We worked with Siga to make sure that this was going to be installed properly, but it also gives us the completion to our pen test. We have the vapor barrier underneath our slab, which is taped to our vapor retarder on this wall. It goes up to our sill, and then from our sill it goes across underneath our wood sill and then ties into the exterior WRB, which gives us the continuous barrier all the way around the entire house, which is really important, especially building in a passive standard. And then our wall here, we have a 2x3, so we have that 1 inch of air gap. We'll fill this with additional batt insulation, but this is actually going to be phase 2 of the project, so it's designed so we can get everything basically in place, our rough electrical, our rough plumbing, but this won't be finished until later on. So you guys have asked on Instagram, I'm going to go this way, Doug, about the shop and said, oh, it's a really small shop, or, you know, I would want a bigger shop. It's designed to be small. It's also designed to be outside of the envelope. So as I'm walking this way, we're passing some mechanical space, and this is our envelope of the home. So if you guys remember, there's a main part of the house, you have that breezeway. I'm standing under the breezeway here, and then I'm under the garage over here. And this is all metal deck, concrete on top, and this will all be its own area. If she wants to add heat later on, we can absolutely do that. We've prepped it for a mini split so that she can heat this area, but this will be a workshop, and it's got the great view outside here. Mark and Brian are over here talking about some flashing details, but you get that view out at the river there, and then access right here to the backyard, which would be underneath the future deck. Another thing with the mechanicals is every square inch had to really be considered. We have our main mechanical room here, we have an electrical room here where we'll have a water meter, and then under here is actually one of our air handlers. The entire stair was actually framed out of 2x on the risers, the treads, the stringers, and we do not have a center one, and that was intentional so we could shift that equipment and fit it in here. Julia did a really good job coordinating, working with Ross Chathui over at T2 Engineering, and working through all of the mechanical sizing, the ductwork layout, and everything has been thought through, so we're maximizing the space, especially when it comes to mechanical equipment and finding a home for it. And it also has to be serviceable, so that's something that we have to consider. So I want to go upstairs. I want to talk to you guys about some of the flashing details that we are working with. One of the things that we have to do is we have to make these custom aluminum pieces of flashing for underneath our windows. And the reason that we have to do that is because our windows are set in. We've talked about how all of this taping, water management has been figured out. Our window is actually going to be set back slightly. So we want a nice sheet metal sill. We talked about using wood. It would likely be fine, but from longevity, if we can use metal, why not do that? And then furthermore, we talked about, well, let's not just use metal, but what if we were to fabricate them and then have them powder coated to match the window? Look really nice, right? So Mark is here today, but we've been walking through on how we'd like to bend this. Now, you know, keep in mind, guys, YouTubers, these are rough mock-ups. These are not designed to be final, but we're just figuring out what's the best way to get this, you know, to fit around. And I'm not going to put this on because I don't think this is the one that we ended up with, and I'm not sure where that one is. But either way, the point is we'll fabricate these. We'll get these to work. We'll get these to make sure that they slip on over here all the way back, custom size for each window, and then we'll send these and have them powder coated to match the window. Now, this will be just the sill here. Our jamb going up on either side of the window will be a cedar, and it will actually stick out proud, because if you guys remember, we have 2 layers of insulation, 3 inches of Rockwool comfort board, 3 inches of Rockwool comfort board, and then 1/2 inch of our exterior sheathing. Then we'll have our rain screen, and then our cedar shingles, and our cedar shingles will die into the side of what will be the trim. If you want to kind of envision this here, our trim will stick out just like that, almost flush with our sill. We'll have our plywood, and then we'll have our rain screen, and then our cedar shingles will die into it, and you'll have a nice 1 inch wide red cedar piece of jam stock that all of our trim will tie into. Versus the traditional, you know, 1x4 or something like that, we'll just have a nice 1 inch piece of cedar running around those windows. A couple of other areas that we have to have some custom flashing made is down here at the foundation. So we want to make sure that any bulk water that makes its way all the way back here, which is unlikely, but could happen, lands on top of this foundation. We want to be able to get it out. So Mark is going to bend up some copper that will run up the wall, across the foundation, extend 3 inches out, so we capture our 3 inches of insulation, and then turn down in front of what our finish condition is. Our finish condition is still something that we're talking about. You guys ask about a lot. Rockwool does have a detail where we can mesh this and then parge or stucco this. It is something that we are considering. The one concern there is that stucco is not designed to be below grade, which realistically this isn't going to be below grade, but we would want to extend it about 4 inches below our mulch line or our plant bed line. So you do have that continuous finish all the way down, and you're not running the risk of things settling and then seeing the exposed Rockwool over time. We're also looking at a pre-manufactured panel product that could be adhered to this. We even considered things like Boral True Exterior, but just found that the labor and the cost didn't really make sense for a situation like this. Though it would be a great product, it just wouldn't. It didn't seem to make sense. So my suggestion, and something that we are exploring, is that stucco finish, and making sure that we do it in a manner that does have longevity, whether it's a synthetic stucco. But if you guys have experience with it, I'd love to see that in the comments below, and we can dig into it a little bit more. We're gonna have a lot of flashing details up at our Tesla roof, and then where our Tesla roof drops, it's actually gonna drop into a Dura-gutter. So it's actually an extruded aluminum gutter system that will be tucked behind our fascia, so you actually won't see the gutter, but we will have downspouts that will be visible. So we're looking at a 3x3 manufactured square downspout. We're talking about sending this out for powder coat, and it's designed in a way that at the corners it will sit right on top of our shingle and straight up. So there'll be no angles or elbows needed. The way that overhang is designed, this goes straight up into it. On the back, which is something that we didn't talk about, but you guys have seen on Instagram, this is a 2x6 gutter. And we have this long overhang, and it's about 4 feet, and you see the siga, my vest, goes underneath that soffit. That barrier will be transferred inboard where our window line is, again having that continuous line, but we have a gutter way out at that edge, and we do not want this really big downspout coming down underneath the gutter and then running down the house. So Julia has actually designed a gutter that will sit tight up against our siga, slight pitch, about an 1/8 inch per foot. It will run all the way back to closest to the window, and then our finished soffit detail will actually be below this. So we'll have a cedar soffit below. If you can picture 3 inches lower than what is there now, this will be tucked up in between those 2 layers, and then again you'll have just a straight downspout going down, again eliminating any weird angles or elbows or things like that. So we'll dig into that detail in a future episode. Appreciate you guys sticking around. Hopefully we answered some of those questions that you guys have been asking. If there's anything else you want to know, drop it in the comments below. We'll see you guys next week.